Welcome to the Regular People Podcast. I'm Wade, and today I'm joined by Leslie. Hi.
Hi.
So before we get started, I've been gotten some feedback from listeners that they would prefer it if episodes were a little bit shorter. I know the last few have been like 3 hours. So I'm going to keep this one under 2, and probably the next several under 2 and see how that feels. I personally like listening to long-form stuff. There's a podcast episode I'm listening to right now that's 5 hours. But I guess that's not everybody's thing. People have been telling me to do 1 hour episodes. And that I think is like too short. I think the nice thing about the podcast format is that you don't feel constrained in the conversation for time. You can say whatever you want. Like you don't have to try and chop up what you're saying or super condense it. Like you can just be at ease with what you need to say because you know that you've got all. There's no like cap. But I guess this one there's going to be a 2 hour cap if that's fine. So, Leslie, tell me a little bit about yourself, about who you are. Let the listener get to know you a little bit before we start talking about our subject. One question I always go after is, what does your last 5 years look like? You could think of that as work life. You could think of that as how you've changed as a person. You could think of that as your interests.
Well, it's helpful to think back into the last 5 years because that probably included the end of my college career and then moving here to Milwaukee for my first job outside of college.
Where'd you move from?
I moved from Whitewater, Wisconsin.
Did you grow up there?
No, I grew up in Janesville.
And then you went to Whitewater for college?
Yep, at UW Whitewater. I went into an art major first, and then I kind of freaked out because I was only 18 years old and I didn't understand how college was set up. I thought it was just like high school. Like I remember calling like my admissions counselor or something, or a counselor, and asking them if the day was set up like an 8-hour day like high school is. Like I had no idea. So completely unaware, get there, realize there's no photography major, and I wanted to get into photography. There's only an art major.
Okay.
So I'm sweating at this point, and I choose to go into art education because I thought it would be fun to be, like a kindergarten teacher, be some sort of art teacher.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and then I realized, oh, well, the arts are dying in the schools, so maybe I would be better, because we go to college to obviously get a degree to then be employable, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to be employable, and I don't think art education is an employable status anymore, and I was freaking out because, I don't know what it's going to look like on the other end for, 3-4 years from now. So I went with a cushy job, and it was early childhood education. So I still took art as my minor.
Nice.
Graduated, got a job here in Milwaukee, moved here in 2018.
Did they still have like plenty of photography classes though at Whitewater, or not really?
I didn't end up taking one.
Oh, okay.
I did not end up taking... Wait, did I? No, I didn't. I didn't even end up taking a photography class. That's hilarious. I didn't know that happened. So... There you go.
That was the reason I didn't go to college until quite recently. First, 7-8 years, I didn't go to college because I couldn't decide on what to go for. Mm-hmm. I was like, there's so many things I could go for. I don't know which one. Mm-hmm. And also, I didn't have any money. I didn't want to be in debt. Yeah. Didn't have good enough grades in high school to get any scholarships probably. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't go.
It's a tough choice.
Yeah.
We, force young children, literal 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds to try to think of a job that will make them employable 5 years from there and take on thousands of dollars that they may not be able to pay for.
Yeah, it is kind of ridiculous because it's like you have to somehow know what the field looks like when you haven't even had any experience working in it. Like you don't know what jobs there are because the only job you've had is maybe a high school job, working at a restaurant or mall or something.
Yeah, you're just like a shithead little high schooler and you don't know what...
Like, how are you supposed to know that you really should have gone into computer science if you want to be, maximally employable?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is a cool field that I kind of wanted to go for. Computer science, but I didn't. Still could, I guess.
Well, to just kind of end is moved here. It helped that I had friends here, and throughout college, I would come and visit my friends who lived in the River West neighborhood of Milwaukee. Yeah. And that's how I got familiar with Milwaukee. I liked it. And so when the opportunity came to now find a job, I wanted to go where my friends were.
If you grew up in Janesville and went to college in Whitewater, how did you get those Milwaukee friends? Did they also go to Whitewater and then they moved before you did or something?
No, they were actually friends from Janesville. Interestingly, they were my brother's friends. My brother's like 4 years older than I am. He had these cool friends. I was like a little sister and wanted to like budge into all of his life happenings. You know, my brother became uncool to these friends, and then I became cool to these friends. So
sad for your brother.
Yeah, so that's how I got to know them.
Oh, okay. Do you just have the one brother, or do you have
I have one brother.
multiple siblings? Okay. Yeah. So then, what job did you get out of college?
I got a job at a nonprofit, and it's federally funded. We're early Head Start and Head Start programs, which is a federally funded program. You know, we have students who come into our school. There are teachers there in classrooms, but we also provide home visiting services, and that's what I do. I'm a home visitor. I do parent educating through home visiting. I go to homes, knock on doors of families every day. I meet with the same 12 families for a year or more. It's a voluntary program on the family's part, and meet with families who have children between the ages of 0 and 5.
Is it fun? Or is it not so much fun, but more like rewarding?
As all teachers say, it's rewarding work. Yes. Yes, it's very rewarding because I work with many backgrounds of people that I feel in my everyday life I'd never come across.
Yeah.
I work with so many different nationalities, religions, cultures, languages.
And then that's all just for those families are going to the one school. So
Yes.
So it's not like you have to go super far away to different areas. Just all within one school district that you're visiting these houses.
Yeah, we do kind of have a range of where we can go and visit families. For example, I just drove over to Greenfield today, which was like a 23-minute drive from my office. But yeah, we can't go all the way to like Waukesha. We're not going to, I don't know what other like faraway suburb, but I think we stay in Milwaukee County, which Milwaukee County kind of encompasses a lot of those.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've had that job ever since?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other jobs you've had or just the one? Like
outside of college?
Yeah,
just this one.
Oh, okay. Is this something that you even do over the summer? Do you still visit the families, or like most education jobs?
12-month employee.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So then what do you do when you visit these families?
All sorts of stuff. It really depends on the child and the family's needs, because we focus on child development with the families. Again, like a lot of families, they have refugee status. They're new to the country.
Okay.
And so I've literally had visits where I'm sitting with a family in their home and they hand me a stack of their mail because they don't know what's junk mail and what's actual important mail. Or they get mail from, they see it's from their school, their older, child's school.
Yeah.
And they may not know what the letter's saying. So
that's not just a refugee problem. That's, I think, an everyone problem. You get so much mail that it's like, do I have to pay this, or is this like...
Yeah. So again, it just, every day looks different. Every family's needs and child's needs look different.
Like, are you doing at-home teaching too? Or is it like testing or just surveying? I'm just wondering, I know it's probably changes from family to family, but like, what is the bulk of the work?
It's the purpose of it, really.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I would think of it as like intervention services, working with a family who has children to be a support for families and parents, because parents need support, whether you're income eligible or not. Like, parenting is hard work, and parents have questions, and parents need to rely on someone from time to time. And, there are cases where families who do have more of an income may have more support than those who are low income. And our program is a low income eligibility program. And pretty much the purpose of our services is to just boost parent-child engagement, attachment, because we truly believe that the parent is the first and most important teacher in their child's life. And we kind of support that idea in how we engage our families, the information that we give them. once their child gets to age 5, we can't be servicing them anymore. Age 5 is a cutoff, so like we may help them find options in
That's the cutoff for Head Start, or that's the cutoff for like your specific job?
the cutoff for Head Start and
okay.
our job, because we're under Head Start.
Right.
So helping the family find different options in the school, in the community for schools if they need it.
Yeah.
Do all sorts of stuff like that. But really, Head Start is to get, like, the program Head Start was created in order to give low-income children a better chance, you may say. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but limit the achievement gap.
Yeah.
Of, you know, the families who have higher incomes, the children, you know, have outcome, like learning outcomes that are stronger than their low income counterparts. The children from low income houses, they show not as great school outcomes. So we fill in with activities and engagement with the parent and child, kind of boosting their learning before they get to kindergarten or before they get to K4.
So then does that program, does it depend on parents a lot too? Like, do these parents have to have like really open schedules to be able to do this? Like, they obviously they can't be at work when you're there.
Yeah, we meet with a lot of moms. I hardly meet with dads only.
Oh, okay.
Dads are the ones that are usually working.
Yeah.
Really with the different cultures, nationalities. Dad's usually the one that works and mom stays home with the children. So it's the mom I'm usually meeting with.
Because I just imagine that kind of has a implicit barrier to entry as well. Not just because like obviously if you want to be joining Head Start, then it's low income eligibility, like you said. But then you would also need to make sure one parent is at least not working. Because perhaps if you lived in a low income household, both parents would want to be working.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to have your kid in Head Start, then you can't do that.
Yeah.
Are there any families where you're meeting with maybe like a nanny or caretaker or non-parent figure?
There are times where, yes, I've met with grandparents.
Grandparents, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's rare. Because you made a great point. Wow. I'm going to take that home and think about that. Because sometimes I feel like our jobs would become obsolete if in this country people were actually paid livable wages.
Right. You didn't have to work 2-3 jobs to support your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's like one of the main reasons, maybe not main, I don't know, but one of the reasons why you've got less success for low-income kids is because it's like less option to spend time with their parents because their parents need to be so busy to even maintain the family's money.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, on the other end of it, you've got the classic story of the rich dad who's never home because he's such a, workaholic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more of a choice thing. He doesn't need to be spending all that time because he's got so much money anyway, but then the kids are unhappy because they never see him. But with like a low income family, that's like by necessity, like your parent needs to have 2 different jobs and never be home. Mm-hmm. So what was the degree you got in the main one?
The main one was early childhood education and development.
Yeah. Okay. So that was one of the topics that you said you wanted to talk about today. The 2 topics, we've got early childhood education and development and also labor power and unions. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about that one a little bit, so let's continue talking about it. So why did you want to go for the early childhood education and development? What is this focus on? What did you learn in your degree? Did you have to do any like big projects or studies? Answer any of those questions. You don't have to answer all of them.
Why I chose again to go from art education to early childhood education was just if I was going to be employable or not. Right. That's why kids are forced into college anyways, is to become employable at the end.
Okay, so it was mainly for the employability, but did you have any like background interest in it already that made you want to do it aside from just getting a job? Like,
I'm trying to think what else.
Did you want to work with like kids or low income families or like help 6-year-olds learn or? Yeah,
because I feel like when I was my college self making this decision, I would want to bet that it wasn't all about being employable. I think the fact that I wanted to be maybe a kindergarten teacher, art teacher before then made me realize, like, I think I do like kids. I didn't babysit a lot, though. I was the baby of the family. So it's not like I had any, of my childhood taking care of my siblings or cousins that were younger than me. I feel like somewhere in there I adored children in some aspect, and then once I got into the program, I think I started to adore children a lot more.
Yeah. Like, what are the important factors of a child's, I guess, proper, healthy, or like the best way you could develop a child? Like, what are the important things to have?
Hmm.
I mean, I've probably a good relationship with your parents is one, and
Yeah.
money is probably another one.
Yeah, I would definitely say from what I've learned is social emotional skills come first in the developing years of a child, which is usually between 0 to 5 is the most foundational, and then 0 to 8, like extending another 3 years, would be also another soft spot of development for children. So social emotional skills.
Yeah. I imagine a lot of that comes from interacting with peers.
Yes.
In your
Yep.
With your job, are you doing anything to like try and get these kids around other kids their age? Like put them in clubs or something like that, or sports, or do you try to get them interacting with other kids?
Yeah, thankfully our agency, our yeah, I would call it our agency, we do play groups. We call them socializations. We do them once a month. But at the same time, learning can happen in the home, and the child has siblings. The child has cousins that come over. Social emotional skills and interacting with kids their age, or siblings a little older or younger than them, is still helpful. It just takes also an engaged adult to help with things like their playtime and sharing, being more strategic, being more creative on how a parent can engage in those situations to help teach teachable moments. So socializations are great, and like having those play dates are great, but you can teach those skills within your own home between siblings.
This might be a putting you on the spot question, but do you have an example of a good skill that should be taught to a young child that you're thinking of?
Like a social emotional skill?
Yeah.
Yeah, something so simple as two kids playing right beside each other, and one kid has the car that the other kid wants, and the other kid goes and reaches and grabs for it. That could be a teachable moment where you teach the kid who's grabbing for the toy, if they're of age and it's appropriate to teach them this, because sometimes if they're young, they don't understand fully what you're trying to say to them. So you change your strategy. But if it's the right child, right age, you can teach them using, your verbal communication. Like, hey, Johnny has that toy right now. When Johnny's done with that toy, you can play with that toy. But for right now, let's go play with something else.
Yeah.
And that has to be constant. Has to be constant, directing them to something else. Just teaching them that skill. That's just something that came up right off the cuff. Something easy.
Do you ever run into problems where maybe the parents are also lacking these social emotional skills that they ideally would be teaching their children?
100%. And that's what we talk about a lot. Well, not a lot, but that's what we talk about in just being the roles that we're in, of how, recognizing that our parents may not be able to teach these skills to their children because they may not have these skills themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe changing our strategy as parent educators, or changing our perspectives as parent educators too.
Yeah. So then do you think you're teaching the parents more than you're teaching the children? Is like teaching the parents to teach the children? Or is it maybe 50-50, teaching children directly and teaching parents directly yourself?
Yeah. I think in the ways that we engage with the children, their children, we can model.
Yeah.
And then the parents, obviously, the effects of our modeling, like, oh, that worked out well for you. Why doesn't that work out for me?
Yeah.
Having a conversation around that. Yeah, we deal with a lot of parents who deal with mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. So then you said you see like 12 families over the course of a year or more. Do you like gauge these families on improvement over the course of that time? Like, do you keep notes of how they're doing and what they still need to learn on?
Yeah, we have different assessments. We do little data points.
Yeah. Do you have like a idea of like readiness? Like this child, like the Head Start program really worked for them, but not for this other kid. Like, do you keep that in your head?
Yep, we do assessments for the child. The different developments of learning, the 5 or 6 different domains of their learning.
What are they?
They are cognitive, communication and language, fine motor, gross motor, personal social, maybe one, Social emotional may be another one, or personal social and social emotional could be together.
What's the difference between fine and gross motor?
Fine motor is what we do, with our hands, writing, picking things up, coloring, buttoning, self-help skills, being able to hold a spoon, hold it the right way, put it in your mouth, and like the food's not going out of your mouth.
Yeah.
All of those little fine motor skills. Gross motor, our big muscles,
Oh, okay.
jumping, climbing, walking, running.
So do you have like, I don't know, a guideline sheet of like where a 3-year-old should be at? What should a 3-year-old be able to do with their hands? Like a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, what's the difference between what they can do with their hands? Do you have anything like that in?
Yeah. And you learn a lot of that in a program like early childhood
Right.
education. And we do have, you can find those easily online.
Yeah.
We also do have, I don't think like evidence-based is the best word to use, but we do have help assessments that are like averaged out. Like they have been researched and been used for dozens of years with assessing a child's development and how they're progressing.
These assessments that you make, do you share that information with the family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So then they like, how often do you do that?
They're kind of like progress reports.
Right.
How I like to give examples to parents. Like if I'm like, oh, we do the help and it does this, I just like to say, I was just telling this to one of my families today. We just started our program today, so I got to start meeting with families today.
Oh, that's cool.
And I explained to this parent, oh, it's
All
kind of
new
like a
families
progress.
today?
No, not all new
You still
families.
have some carryovers from before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just explaining to her that, this assessment, just think of it like a progress report, how your child's doing in these different domains, what their strengths are, and then we able to see like what else, what are areas where they could improve.
Do you ever kick people out of the Head Start program? Perhaps if they go a year without any improvement or something like that?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Do you keep them in the program? Do you keep watch over these families longer if maybe they're not improving? Like you said, just like a year or more. Would you extend it to 2 years or 3 years if you still are waiting to see improvement with the family?
Yeah, the program is just voluntary. Parents can leave whenever they want. But I've had families, I just said the last program year that ended, I said goodbye to some families that I'd had 2.5 years with just because they, enjoy the program and their kid enjoys it and they notice that their kid is learning and improving. And so they just continue to stick with the program.
So then these families could stay in for the full 0 to 5 years, just normally.
Yeah, they could.
Okay. One question I have that sometimes comes up with like kids I see or like kids I've known, like my nieces or like my friend's little brother. I remember when I was younger that like I notice they're like 3, 4, or like 5, and they just never talk. Do you know off the top of your head maybe what the like ideal age is for speaking?
I'm interested now. What do you mean by they don't talk?
Like maybe they're just super shy and they just don't even even speak at all. Or maybe it's like a 3-year-old and the way they talk sounds like they should be far better than they currently are.
Okay.
I see a 3-year-old who can say some like full sentences, and I see a 3-year-old who still like says nonsense words and like can't put a sentence together. Like, what's the ideal age that you can speak a full sentence?
Yeah, I would say around 2 years old. Ideally, a child should be saying 3 to 4 word sentences.
Yeah.
It is telling. I mean, I see every day the true equation of parent input and child development output.
Yeah.
Like, I see it clear as day.
So then if the parents aren't communicating enough with the children, then the children themselves aren't very communicative.
100%.
So how does that work with like the families you said, maybe like refugees or families who don't speak English or speak very little English? Then who's really the source of English learning for these kids? Is it you? Because if it's
or
not
Coco Melon. Or Coco Melon.
Shows? Yeah, okay.
Honestly, I've had some parents who came from Malaysia and their children are incredible English speakers now. And they learned a lot from like ABC or PBS. PBS.
Wow.
And some things like surprise the parents. So like now they're saying this and I don't know where they got it from. And Yeah, it's kind of funny to see how Cocomelon is shaping our earlier generations.
I don't even know what Cocomelon is.
It's like I think it's on YouTube, or it's its own weird.
Like some animated kids
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
Okay. I just remember watching a lot of Sesame Street and like Teletubbies.
Yeah.
As a kid.
Yeah, Cocomelon is
Is it
geared for children. It's
Is it trying to be educational?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Have you heard in the past over the pandemic there was a funny children's song going around that was Johnny no papa. Have you heard that? Or
I don't know if I
okay,
have, but that's from Cocomelon?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, maybe I'd have to like hear how it goes, but yeah, I don't know. Just based off
Eating
that.
sugar, no papa. Telling lies, no papa. Okay, well.
Yeah, not ringing a bell, but
yeah,
maybe I should look it up.
If I had any young kids in the room, they would
They would
be
get
going crazy right now.
Oh, okay. Another question I've got just about childhood education in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is it drastically different to teach kids versus teaching teenagers or adults, do you think?
I mean, yeah, just due to the age.
Right.
And how you address people.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to talk to a 18-year-old like I would talk to a 4-year-old.
Right.
But maybe in the ways of being a teacher and educator, like how you approach something, being strategic on how you deliver information, how you scaffold. You know, I feel like scaffolding can be the same whether you're teaching a 4-year-old, a 14-year-old, or a 24-year-old.
Could you describe scaffolding?
Scaffolding is when you recognize, let's say I'm just working with a child and you recognize this child gets this certain idea, this certain concept, and you realize, okay, if you understand this and you've mastered this, you can go on to the next step. You scaffold them to the next.
Oh, okay.
So in education, just realizing, being an educator, not pushing them to a new concept or try a new thing too fast, observing where they're like meeting them where they're at and they're learning now.
Yeah.
Working them slowly, recognizing where their strengths are, scaffolding them to where you think they could go next, which is just it's another step up. It's not 5 steps up.
Yeah.
You shouldn't go 5 because that's not going to go well for you or them. You just go to the next step, but you have to be intentional. You have to be observant. But I think that's the same across the board if you're, again, teaching different age levels. But definitely how you're addressing people, it's going to be different with the ages.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wonder, like...
And the concepts.
Yeah, like the content that you're teaching them, of course,
Yes.
is different. But I imagine there must be some sort of difference in, like, the idea of responsibility that the students have. Because if you're maybe a high school teacher or professor at college, you're really not going to accept any excuses whatsoever for, like, late work or not turned in work or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that would have to be very different if you're teaching first graders or kindergartners, because you can't expect them to have formed those habits yet of like, or like knowing like something has to be done right. I mean, you don't really assign homework like that in first grade, do you? That has a deadline. It's more just in class work. But still, I imagine there must be some point over the course of a child's education where teachers start to thinking of that bad behavior as being the child's fault rather than, I don't know, the situation that they're in.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because we talk a lot in early childhood education about if there's a behavior being shown, just think of, is this a need below the surface? For example, a child is biting. That's a bad behavior. We always call it a bad behavior. That's a bad kid. Obviously, we don't want children biting. Yeah. But there's a need behind that. That child isn't biting just to bite because he's having fun. There's a need behind it. It's a communicative need. And when you bring up the idea of like a high schooler not completing their work,
or biting.
I think it could be the same thing of there is a need behind this behavior. There's a reason behind this behavior.
Yeah, because in my view, that's basically just how it is with all human behavior, is that really none of it is under your control. They're communicating
something.
Yeah, it's some like maybe not expressed in the most healthy way, but some thing that you could help fix. You could try and help this person. But it seems like, sadly, at some point in a child's development, that adults just kind of in a way give up on them, just thinking like, from now on, all your bad behavior, I'm just gonna punish you for it rather than try to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that maybe it's around the middle school age where that happens.
Mm.
But I guess you wouldn't see much of that transition if you're just working with very young children.
Yeah, I wish I could speak more about it because I have no experience
Yeah.
teaching anywhere, like even 5 and up.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like 0 to 5 is my bread and butter. 2 and 3, my bread and butter. Like
2 and 3, is that the most common ages that you deal with?
Yeah.
What's the youngest kids that you have?
Right now I have a
Newborns?
10-month-old.
10-month-old. What do you do with the 10-month-old?
Exactly. That's what parents ask me. What do I do with my child or my baby? It's just looking at me.
But I mean, like what do you do to stimulate learning, or like the Head Start program, like when they're so young? Like just play music, or because they can't understand anything that you're saying at that point, can they?
You can still engage them with activities, but I mean, it's called developmentally appropriate practice. You want to recognize where they're at in their development. I mean, there are activities for a 10-month-old.
Yeah, I guess maybe at that age it's less about trying to teach them concepts, but more just stimulating their like curiosity, or like having them play with things and like being
letting them
engaged
play
with stuff rather than
explore.
Yeah.
That's a child's first and most important job and only job is to play. And a lot of parents don't understand that.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think the purpose of play is? Because I feel like if you think of more like ancient cultures or more tribal cultures, it seems like the type of play that you do there is a like direct mimicry of what the adults are doing a lot of the time. Like they are practicing hunting, or they're practicing all the things that they'll be doing as an adult.
Yeah.
But I still see some of that nowadays, like when kids play house or whatnot. But I feel like it's much more detached nowadays. Like the kids play from like, it doesn't seem to me like it's a readiness for adulthood. Like I don't see how playing with your truck is getting you ready for adulthood. Like practicing tag, or like some sort of game where it's like physical activity and it's readying you for, I don't know, going off to hunt if you're, living in 8,000 years ago or something.
Yeah.
How do you think play actually is beneficial, and like what is it actually doing for a child? Probably a very open-ended question.
Yeah. I think play can encompass a lot of the domains, like the developmental domains that I mentioned earlier. Hoping that there is an engaged caregiver there to facilitate play, to make play much more rich with language, where a caregiver can notice all of the teachable moments and add in information, show a child how to do something new, and then all of a sudden the child's doing it and it's a new skill.
Yeah, it's very good for social interaction.
Yeah, I think play encompasses all of that. Play is then also led by the child. You are following the child's lead. You are following the child's interests. You're not, you can always
like
set up
play between adults and children. You mean you're following the child's lead? Like if you're playing with your own child, you're following the child's lead?
Yeah.
That's what you mean? Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if this is even accurate, but I kind of feel in a way that as a child, the creativity of playing is rewarded. That's like what you want out of your children. But it is basically not rewarded at all as you get into adulthood. Like it's like everything you were practicing as a child, don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like we could probably do that better. But
I have this spiritual guide that I like to follow. And she talks about that, how we're very limited as adults. Like we don't think we can play.
Yeah. And we totally can, and many adults love to, but it's not really something that's part of like the adult working life.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
No. Get into that.
Oh yeah, the labor power needs. Yeah. I don't know. That's one thing that I try to do with my time if I can is work less, play more, even if it's not going to make me money. But
or just learn how to think more playfully.
Yeah.
Through your work obligations. That could be thinking more creatively if you want to put it that way.
Yeah. So, one question that I have is does the Head Start program work? Does it achieve what it wants to?
I think it does. Because I've spoken to some parents who have older students, or older children who are now in grade school, and I'm thinking of a family in particular, and they didn't know about our program, specifically our agency and what we do, back when they had their first child. But now that they've put their second oldest child through the program, they can see incredible differences. And who knows, that could, unless we measure that, who's to say it was us? Who's to say it was this program? But we have all staff meetings every year before we start our new school year. It's kind of like a big employee party, really. And we have keynote speakers. And I remember one of the years, like 2 years ago, we had a keynote speaker who went to our agency and spoke, just as who he is now and who he remembers. He still remembers his teacher from our agency. He just recounted all of his good experiences with it. Again, who's to say that this short amount of time spent in our program is what builds people for future success? But there is now a lot of scientific research coming out that is showing that the first 5 years of a child's life is quite foundational. And that's one of the reasons why I put this down is I'm in it. I see it every day. I do think it's important. We do get trainings on the brain. We do get trainings on brain development. We do get trainings on, from actual medical people coming to talk to us, where they see a child's brain that is stimulated, meaning like they are being talked to, they are being played with, their needs are being met on a consistent, timely manner, versus a brain of a child where those things are more neglected. And it's there, you can see it. It builds the brain. Or it doesn't.
Yeah. How long has Head Start been a thing?
19. I'm gonna get the year confused with the establishment of my agency because I get them confused. But it's in the 1960s. I know.
Oh, really?
Like I'm gonna say 1965. I feel like I want to look that up or something. But it's in the 1960s. I remember.
Okay. Yeah, I'm always just slightly dubious of. Like you're saying, like how can you be exactly sure what is causing the thing, especially with a lot of psychological research. I've talked about this before, but there's like a really big bias in our culture toward nurture rather than nature, or like toward the effect that you can actually have on someone. When a lot of cases, these studies that people show to demonstrate that don't actually necessarily back up what the person's trying to say. So yeah, I don't doubt that the Head Start program works. I'm just always curious about how can you be sure, because for instance that that family that you were describing, they have the one child, they didn't put them in Head Start, and the second child they do. I mean, it could have also just been a factor of like them learning about Head Start and the willingness to put their child in it. That itself shows that the parents are more engaged and more active in that child's development. And it would have been that way whether they actually put them in Head Start or not. Just the fact that they're thinking more about it, being more engaged. But I mean, it's not to say like I feel like it's definitely only a good thing to put your kid in Head Start program. Like, what is it going to harm them? If anything, it's going to benefit them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
was thinking that too. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is adding to. Yeah. And even if you add to in small amounts or big amounts, you're still adding, and that adds up. Yeah. So I think there is some credibility to the success of a Head Start program and what its aim is.
Is that something that's like in all states in the U.S.?
I would definitely think that Head Start is in every state in the United States. You can find a Head Start program. Yeah.
Do you think I don't know how to phrase this question. I guess what I'm thinking is, do you think that's the best way to spur a child's development? Would it be better or worse? Or I mean, you just have to speculate here, I guess, to perhaps maybe just pay the families. Like, if it's focusing on low-income families, would it might not have more of an impact to just make them not low-income anymore?
Oh yeah.
But I mean, who knows?
That's a great. I mean, I've started thinking about all of that maybe a year and a half ago. Again, I had mentioned earlier, I feel like our jobs have become obsolete if there are actual strong, livable wages in this country. Where the parents can actually afford necessities that they need and then some. And, they didn't have to rely on certain governmental assistance because they could afford things. Yeah. They wouldn't have to, they could afford daycares. they wouldn't have to rely on, a Head Start program, which doesn't cost anything. Head Start doesn't cost anything. And bring up a good point, because I remember reading in my labor book that I just finished, there was a teacher in there sharing, I can't remember the quote verbatim, but she said, I feel like I would do more of a justice to these children if I organized their parents.
Makes me think of that question of like, what would be the best way to stimulate these children, their development, whether it would be like a UBI or like livable wages or Head Start programs or free daycare or whatnot. Is a different example, not even related, but related in my mind, is the St. Jude's Children's Hospital for like children with cancer.
Yeah.
That's also free if you have to send your child there. And people donate. It's like a nonprofit organization. People donate a bunch of money, like millions, maybe even billions of dollars every year. I'm not exactly sure. It's definitely in the high millions. Except the thing is, saving one child's life in St. Jude's costs upwards of $200,000. So if you compare that to lots of other child-saving or life-saving charities, such as fighting malaria, it's literally $1 per life saved. So then, while it is a noble thing to save a child's life that has cancer, in a way, it's like you could be saving so many more lives if you spent that money in a different place, like on malaria nets. You wouldn't be saving American children's lives if that's what matters to you, but you'd be saving children's lives. You just live in different parts of the world. So, I don't know. I guess usually trying to figure out like if whatever the thing is, if that's the most efficient way to do it, or if there'd be a better way. But for Head Start, do you provide any like material goods or like, because you said that if like these parents don't have access to if like a low income family, they don't have access to things that kids might need, does Head Start help with that in any way, or is it just spending person to person time with them?
Yeah, we I couldn't say this across the board for all Head Start programs. I just know that our nonprofit does this, where we do books for kids, and so every month a child gets 3 books. Oh, okay. I just today picked out 3 books for every child of mine.
You picked them out?
We pick them out. They give us brand new books, and we can go see what they have. They have board books. They have books for older kids. Not older as in like a first grade or second grade reader, because that's not our kids, but longer books, more words. It's more of a storyline than a board book would be. So I got to pick out some. So yeah, we give books. Over the pandemic, it changed things a little bit. We gave out diapers and wipes, because these are very expensive items usually. Sometimes we give formula, but not often. We'll get donations from people. We can, a lot of the material things we can give are donation based. So things like hygiene products, maybe food products here and there. It's not a consistent wave of items, but we do have them. And I guess other material things, not necessarily things like books, but we have nurses on staff. So if a family doesn't have a clinic, like a medical home, we can do important screenings, like lead screenings, making sure kids in Milwaukee get lead tested, because that's a huge issue.
And that's free too?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we also do hearing and vision screens, to make sure, obviously a child needs to see and to hear to learn. Yeah. So we need to make sure these children can see and hear. So we do those screenings as well.
That's actually really interesting to know that they actually provide screenings like that, and I guess like medical services, at least some of them, for free. But I have another question though. Is it difficult? Is it like a difficult process if you're a family wanting to sign up for this? Or is it just kind of a simple opt-in? Do you need to fill out lots of paperwork?
It's definitely harder if you have a family who doesn't speak English.
Yeah. Because that seems paradoxical to me, because you would think those are the families that need it most. If the family doesn't speak English, you would think they would need it most for their kids, the Head Start program for their kids, but it'd be the hardest to sign up. So.
Yeah. It's just hard. I mean, imagine you're the parent educator and you come to my home and I hardly speak English, and you have to go through this. You have to talk about the release of health and medical information and why that's important, why you're signing it. Yeah. And how to explain that in the most basic English that you think that they, can understand.
Do you have any translators that work at your agency?
We we have unofficial translators, so
What does
I'm
that
just
mean?
trying not to get frustrated by the certain aspects of my job
Oh,
that
okay.
are absolutely justified to be frustrated over. But we've hired some parent educators who are bilingual speakers in the communities that we need most.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So like Burmese and Karen, and a lot of people will go to them for translations, but they're that's not their job title. And like
Okay.
you're just adding more extra work for them.
Yeah.
And that just happened yesterday. Where and it happens daily where these people are expecting, and of course they want to help. They're not
Yeah.
going to say no, but I don't like to see them being put in the position where their generosity is being kind of taken.
Exploited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it took a long time. It started over the pandemic where we actually got we started contracting with something called Language Line, which is something that, health clinics will use. You can call in. It's a subscription that our agency pays for. You just give them the information, say, I need a Korean interpreter. They're like, okay, hang on the line. And then, so that's helpful.
Yeah, that's nice.
That is. But it would be nice to have like a physical person that's actually their job title and
Yeah.
not just try to like push more work onto people who already have a caseload and their own work responsibilities. That happens often.
I guess that's just like the eternal struggle of trying to be a good person. Like you want to help, and then it's like you could help in so many ways, and everybody needs your help. It's like
Yeah.
at some point you have to say no. And
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It really sucks though.
Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go back just to, I remembered you asked me that question about the paperwork.
Right.
And it's lengthy. And I think the worst part is for parents to wait because it's not like just after they finish the paperwork, okay, you're in.
Oh yeah.
It has to go through a few hands and bureaucratic steps. And even the employees like me get upset because it takes a long time. There's, not easy flow along the system sometimes. It takes a while to get back to us. So it's a lot of paperwork in the beginning, but it's over. But I think the wait and, parents not fully understanding, like, no, just because you signed your name a bunch of times doesn't mean you get a spot right now. Like, we start services tomorrow. Sometimes parents think that, like, we start services now. Oh, next week. It's like, no, there's a whole thing here. And again, if depending on if you're talking to an English speaking person or not, or English language learner, it's hard. It takes more patience for you to just explain what the process is in the best way you can to someone who may not fully understand at all.
Yeah. Do any of these like applications or paperwork, do they pass through your hands at all? Are you a part of approving someone or whatnot for the program? Or is that totally
it's like
not
higher up stuff?
Right, yeah.
It's our enrollment team. But I do the paperwork with the families in person. And then I hand that paperwork to the enrollment team. They make sure everything's, filled out as it needs to be. They do the things on their database and, and they're in the system now.
Yeah.
Then I get that paperwork back.
So then how did that work? Did they like call a number saying that they want to fill out this paperwork, but they need assistance, and then you come?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And a lot of the families who join us, they hear from word of mouth. That's one of the biggest ways that we are known in the community is word of mouth. Community members talking to community members. Yeah. And so usually parents will be like, I have this family, here's their phone number, and I'll call them. We have like a program interest form first, which is just it's like the starting part where it's just asking simple bio questions really, and then from there you can be like, okay, I'll call you next week, or I'll call you in the next few days to do this bigger paperwork when we can find a time, maybe meet in person or do over phone, whatever works best for you. So kind of stuff like that.
What age does preschool start? Is that after 5 years old?
Yeah, like, preschool would be before like kindergarten, because kindergarten's like 5 or 6.
So then are any of the kids that the families that you have, are they like already in school, like preschool?
Some of them can be in programs while we still service them, but they can't be in another Head Start program while we serve. They can't get double services because we're Head Start, so they can't be in a Head Start program while we also doing Head Start with them. Yeah, they can go to like a daycare or be in a preschool program.
How long do you spend with these families?
90 minutes a week. I'm in there for an hour and a half.
So like just one day.
Per
week. Okay. And how much of your day is spending time with families versus being at the office?
Oh, thankfully I get to spend more time with families than being in the office once the program year starts getting
that's like the
rolling.
part of your job that you actually
Yeah, my office
go
is
for.
the community. My office is other families' homes.
Yeah.
And I would say like tomorrow I'm going to have 3 visits, 90 minutes each. So a good half of my day or more is spent out in the community, in the homes, driving around, driving to and from. I've seen a lot of Milwaukee this way. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. That's the other thing too. I guess I wouldn't have been able to explore Milwaukee as much, I feel, if it wasn't for this job. Like I've been to a lot of the nooks and crannies of Milwaukee.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't really do that very much. Just go to the one place every day. That is an aspect of a job that I think would be cool to have, is being able to go to lots of different locations, even if we're still within one city. Get variety.
Yeah.
That way. I guess like that's kind of nice too. You get to spend time with these families. Probably, do you get attached to them at all, or like get to grow to really like the families that you're spending time with?
Yeah. Yes, I've been invited to some graduation ceremonies of parents, and I've been invited to like families' birthdays, been invited over for dinner. Sometimes I get served food while I'm there because, families are just really hospitable, and they like that, there's someone here in the home to help them or their child. Yeah, I don't think I would in my regular everyday life come across so many diverse people who have walked different lives than me if it wasn't for this job. And I think it's just helped me also grow as a person.
That does sound like a really cool job, but didn't you say that you're looking to switch careers?
Yeah.
Can I ask why?
It's unfortunate. My management, my direct supervisor is so incompetent, inconsiderate, ineffective, and impersonable that she's made me lose like all respect for her. And
wow.
Makes me embarrassed that I'm being led by this woman. And I just want to go, when are you retiring? Because I'd love your job. Because I feel like I'm telling her how to do her job. I'm reminding her how to do her job. She is like dropping the ball every single day.
Wow.
And that seems to be the standard. Obviously, if a leader is doing that in your workplace, they're setting the standard. And it's certainly set because the bar is pretty low for my coworkers and just this work in general.
Really?
Yeah, really. It's challenging in that your experiences with the families, right? Like that can be challenging with like parents dodging you, parents not engaging, parents just being challenging in general. Like that's challenging. That work is challenging, but I'm not being challenged in my other aspects of this work. I'm not, my manager doesn't sit across from me and talk to me about my parents or talk to me about my families, how things are going, isn't asking me updates about them, isn't asking me how I can think differently about this situation, isn't challenging me in those different ways. Like I'm not being challenged anymore. They have really instilled a level of mediocrity and complacency. So those are a lot of reasons with my specific agency. And then some, it's very frustrating. And then secondly is, as I'm sitting there trying to find other jobs in similar fields, we're not paid what we should. Not a lot of people are in different fields. Yeah. And education and the social service workers are like one of the most exploited in this nation. And it's really sad to sit across from a screen and look at the salary that I would be making, and it's not okay. And I would in a heartbeat be an early childhood educator in a classroom or continue being at this job if it paid what it should. Yeah. And it's sad to hear that there's so many incredible people who are moving from education because there's not much there keeping them around or incentivizing them to stay.
Yeah, they don't feel appreciated.
So those two big reasons is pay and just the BS I've been through with the agency that I'm at with this specific supervisor. It's insane.
I heard read a quote like a few weeks back that I thought was pretty good. It goes, "People don't quit jobs; they quit managers."
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh, 100%.
yeah, I don't know if that's entirely true because I've definitely quit jobs where I liked the manager, but
Yeah.
it's probably mostly true.
Yeah, it's probably the majority.
Yeah.
Is the leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't instill any sort of creativity. I've seen myself and I've seen in other coworkers, we bring up new ideas and it's just like this level of, I wouldn't say apathy, but just not excited.
Is there any sort of, because you do assessments or whatnot, progress reports of the families, do the families get to do progress reports of you? Do they get to have like a Yelp review of the person who's coming out to help them out? Like just to make sure everybody's doing a quality work? Is there any way that you get looked at if you're like doing enough for these families or not?
Oh my God. Yeah. So I remember when I first started, when we went on spring break for the week, I remember my supervisors called every family and checked in, which I think is good.
Yeah.
But I don't see that anymore.
Was that the same supervisors or different?
Nope. When I first started, I had a different supervisor and she was incredible.
Mm.
And she actually just left at the end of August. She was in a new position. She was no longer our supervisor at that point. She went back into the classroom, so she left our agency. And supervisors are actually supposed to go out, I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but more than they are doing now, to observe you.
Yeah.
And make sure you're doing a good job. And this one goes out to you, to my supervisor. She observed me virtually over the pandemic with one of my families and then never went over her feedback with me during our one-on-one supervision. She never did. She never told me.
Yeah, what you could improve.
Yeah, no. It's like she completely forgot, like she does with everything else.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good thing. I know that if a family isn't feeling you, they will call the supervisor. They do it often.
Oh, okay.
Could be for many reasons. And it's not, unless it's like really bad of what you did as a parent educator, you're fired. But if it's, more so just preference based and it's not that big of an issue of what you did, like you didn't harm them, you didn't say bad things to them. It's just like the family just didn't feel comfortable with you, whatever, like they'll be switched. Yeah, there's no reviews of. And we we can do our own reviews at the end of the year usually.
Of yourself or of each other? Oh, okay.
Of ourselves. And then our manager does a review of us too. But that doesn't mean anything. That's the other thing that I don't like about this job is from day one, I noticed that there's no reward for doing great work and there's no reprimand for doing bad work.
Yeah.
And that's all because there's no set standard of quality.
Oh.
If you don't set a standard of quality and you're not constantly or continuously monitoring for that quality,
just
the person who does great is just treated the same as the person who does horribly.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. There's no incentive, you're not incentivized for doing good quality work because at the end of the day, we're also we can't get raises for individual work. No. We get raises across the board for things like cost of living adjustment. So everyone gets a raise. Yeah. But like, if I'm doing a great freaking job, I won't get a raise.
Yeah, that sucks.
So it's like, why motivates people then
why would you do a great job?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So dead in the water.
Yeah. That, I don't know. I haven't lived in that world much, but that seems like maybe just a problem in general with like the social work world doesn't pay all that well, and then it's kind of relying on, like you were kind of talking about before, like the exploitation of like good people who want to be doing it because they think it's helping people, so they're putting their all into it, and then you've got some other people who work there who are just working there, not really caring much, and both people are treated the same by the employer. Both are equally as valuable, even though one is obviously doing much better job. Have you heard of the Peter principle? It's a idea that you get promoted up to your level of incompetence. So you're doing a job, you do a good job at it, your boss promotes you. Then you do a good job at that new one, and your boss promotes you. And you get promoted up to the point where you no longer know how to do that job. So this is the supposed reason, at least, like, I don't know if there's any actual studies behind this, it's just an idea, but it's a nice one. I think a bad idea, like a bad good idea, if that makes any sense. A depressing good idea, where managers and supervisors and higher ups are so often incompetent is because they were good at their lower level jobs, and then they kept on getting promoted, and now they're at the point where they no longer know how to do that job because they got promoted too far.
Mm-hmm.
And then the format of so many companies is such that it's really hard to fire people, kind of hard to demote people too. So as an employer, you kind of get stuck in this trap of like, oh, they're really great at sales, I'm going to promote them to be a manager. They suck as manager, but I can't fire them, so we just have a shitty manager. So I think that's what maybe what happens a lot with maybe manager or supervisors like yours, or like some that I've known, where they only knew how to do it, but not that job.
And the higher ups, I feel, also then grow into areas of detachment from what the actual work is like,
definitely.
and then what it's like being a worker in those roles and being told what to do, or having decisions made for you.
Yes, that's definitely part of it too. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is you've mentioned your agency multiple times, but I'm wondering how this works. Is your agency like separate from Head Start, but they like do some of the Head Start work, or like are they a Head Start agency? Is it like they're a franchisee of like Head Start, where like you can have your own Domino's pizza, but you're still under the title of Domino's Pizza, but it's like your own building? Like, what is your agency? Is it not itself Head Start, or is it Head Start adjacent? I'm just confused as to what the difference is.
I am too. I think it would be more Head Start adjacent, because it's confusing when I listen to our family, our director of family services talk about it. She always says, we're a charter, we're a nonprofit, we're a Head Start program. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know, is that all wrapped up into one package?
Right. So it's like a Head Start program. So like, is Head Start like a government funded education program that just pays certain like companies, I guess, to do that like broad category of work that's just helping early childhood development, and like every single little company across the United States is just a Head Start program?
Yeah, I think
they'll have their own like names.
Because I know MPS has Head Start programs in their schools. Like some MPS schools will have,
but they're not affiliated with
programs.
Your agency.
No.
Okay.
No.
So everybody's doing their own separate thing under the category of Head Start.
Yeah, and there's also, but there's Head Start guidelines they have to follow. They're not able to just like go off and do their own thing with Head Start money.
Yeah.
You have to follow the rules of Head Start. But there's different Head Start programs here in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
One just down the road, and the building could obviously look different, have different teachers, obviously, but it's still the same, you know, basic services that are provided.
Okay. That makes more sense then.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. So I think we probably talked about that topic for long enough. If you want to move on to talking about labor power and unions.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of these,
Right.
That conversation was touching that a little bit, which I knew it would. I knew we'd get there.
Yeah. How do you feel about this? Are you pro-union, I'm guessing?
100%. Yes, I am.
Yeah. Is your agency, is it part of a union at all?
It should be.
Okay, but it's not. Yeah. So what is it about labor power that's you feel strongly about?
That's a huge question.
It can have a huge answer.
Yeah, it may. It just might. I feel so strongly for unions. I'm going to start off with a personal note because my father is still union, and I have been able to reap the material benefits of being in a union household. Like, for example, I just turned 26.
Really?
And,
me too.
Well, wonderful. Well,
like 2 days ago.
Not so wonderful as like once I turned 26, I was kicked off of my father's union insurance. But just think of that. 26 years for a child of a worker who's in a union, and that extended to the entire family. So I was raised around it. My dad had conversations with me about it. Once I started becoming a working adult and I started realizing like, oh yeah, health benefits are important. Yeah. You know, 401ks are important. Working conditions are important. Pay is important. And I started to see that, you know, a lot of those good benefits come a lot from union jobs. Statistically, union jobs are paid 30% higher than their non-union counterparts. it's that high of 30%.
Wow.
So that's my personal note why I think labor power and unions are important, because I was a product of that. My dad was able to afford a comfortable life, and I was able to live that life. I was able to go to college because he had a great paying job that provided that. And additionally, I've been having just reflections about the world, and I think a lot of the income inequality we're seeing in this current day has definite ties, as I'm now reading, to
Ronald Reagan.
the gutting, yes, to the gutting of unions, eliminating labor power among the workers, taking manufacturing jobs that were unions. Workers back in the day fought hard for the factory jobs that they had to be good and to be unionized, and then the capitalists took them and put them overseas where they could pay low wages, and be under different working laws where they could provide horrible working conditions.
Suicide nets.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm starting to see that in order for us, I believe that for us to combat income equality is to unionize more workplaces, and for every worker to be a part of a union, or have some sort of organized workplace where the workers are standing in solidarity with one another.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of being a part of like union organizer, that kind of job? Do you get paid for that?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
you do.
Have you ever thought of doing that?
That's literally what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks now, of learning about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is a total new idea of mine, but it's something like, I think I'm interested in this. If this is something I feel is important, and I enjoyed the book I read so much, and I dislike seeing this absurd income inequality, this obscene income inequality. And if I see, if I feel like, like what I said, I believe that in order to combat this is to put power into the workers that make everything in this country run and operate, then if I see that as that important, then I feel like I should be getting into this work. I think that I'm interested. So this is so new. I'm happy to be talking about it now, because I had mentioned like I'm trying to think about a career change.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at jobs every day while at work. Haha. Paid to be doing that. I'm talking to people in the field who are labor organizers, and that's been super insightful. They're giving me so many options. They're giving me so many resources to look into, and those resources so far, just in the past few days, have been really fruitful. So,
is that mostly what type of job you're looking into, or is there other stuff too?
I mean, I would love to be in education, but it's not paying.
Right.
I'm seeing that organizers are paid much more. Yep. So that would be great.
What was the name of the book that you just read?
It's called Beaten Up and Worked Down, I think. It's by Stephen Greenhouse. He's been like a labor reporter for the New York Times for like 20 years. Now labor reporters are few to come by with, low union membership across the United States.
Yeah.
Beaten Up, Worked Down, I think it is.
Oh, okay. What was the gist of the book?
Oh, yeah. The rest of the title is The Past, Present, and Future of American Labor. It talks about, the labor union starting in the past. It talks about what was great is the author talked to real everyday people, like people who work at McDonald's, people who work at Amazon, people who've been working at McDonald's for 15 years and they've never gotten a raise and they're still on $7.25. Wow. And they have families. He talked about the fight for 15. So Stephen Greenhouse, this author, focused on different movements of the labor movement, the fight for 15, the tomato growers, farm workers in, I feel like, Florida, LA service industry workers, talks about just the strategies of the labor organizers fighting for change in these different, big union cities like LA, Chicago, New York. He ends the book by, how we can reclaim our power, what we need to be doing throughout his knowledge of history, throughout his knowledge of being an author in this field of labor and also being a labor reporter. So, Past, Present, and Future of American Labor was a great book. It taught me a lot.
So what is it we need to be doing? I mean, aside from just generally forming more unions, is there any extra stuff to do?
Well, I've thought about this personally. I think it helps to recognize first that we're all workers. Like, we need to have a working class consciousness. We have to understand that we're working class. If you have to work to live, you're working class.
Yeah.
And just recognizing our identity as workers, not consumers. Because in this society, in a consumeristic society, a capitalist society, we're usually seen as consumers. We are also the workers that make that product to be consumed.
Right.
We are a worker. And so recognizing that, standing in solidarity with that. And I think it's going to take a level, I've thought about this a lot, I think it's going to take a level of, I want to say organizing, but I mean, relating to someone else, relating to your coworker, talking to your coworker, being personable to your coworker. That idea of, again, standing in solidarity, having to have social skills and see this as, this is a good place to work and we can make it better. Let's all stand together to achieve that outcome.
Yeah. How difficult do you think it is to form a union these days? Because I feel like so many jobs, if the employees that work there are trying to form a union, the employer could just very easily, especially if it's like, the very low paying jobs that would want to form unions the most, they could just fire everybody and rehire a new staff.
Which, that happens.
Yeah.
And it is scary. And I'm thankful you're asking this question after I've read a little of this book called The Troublemaker's Handbook, How to Fight Back Where You Work and Win, because it's like everything you need to know about these questions. You want to first understand where you work. If it's school or like state municipality, it's going to have different labor relations laws than corporate-based business.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be an uphill battle, but what is expressed in this book is what's the cost if we don't do this? This is work is everything. That's something that's also going back to why I think labor power is so important, is work and our working lives make up the rest of our lives. Work give us our purchasing power to pay for things.
Yeah.
What are we doing for 40 hours of our week every week? Working. What are we doing when we're not working? Commuting to and from work. What are we doing when we're not commuting to and from work? We're talking shit about work. We're recuperating from work. We're making plans outside of work. We're having to shift plans because we have to work now.
Yeah.
Everything is revolved around working. And it seems to me that work is pretty important then. So
this paints a very depressing picture in my mind of such a work-centered life, but that's accurate.
Yeah, but yes, but we could also make work a great place, which is what people back in the 1920s and 30s did when things were looking real bleak in factories with horrible working conditions, horrible pay. That's where our Social Security came from. That's where our minimum wage came from. Yeah. That's where our 8-hour week came from. Still, it's archaic now, but it wasn't back then.
Right. Yeah, like the 5-day work week. That was like 1932 or something like that. That started.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be, if you're trying to unionize at a place, your employer will always
try to stop you.
Yeah. Because it's not in their best interest. It's always going to be a war. And you just have to come to a truce. It's power sharing.
Yeah, I feel like it would be easiest to unionize a place that's really reliant on continuous production, like, I don't know, some important factory, because you can't afford even like a single day or a week of nobody working. So like if all your employees at once just demand to unionize, like you have to do it because you can't stop the steel mill. Yeah. But if it's like a Taco Bell, like who cares if the Taco Bell's closed? Yeah. Taco Bell itself doesn't even care.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So I mean, it's probably hard every way, but might be something that always gets harder over time, because I don't know what jobs are still in America that are that important, that need to have no downtime. I don't know. But I mean, this is still related, but maybe far future or maybe not so far. But what do you think of like the future of work? Because you were just saying that it's very important in your life. And I guess this question could go a few ways, but I'm thinking of it in the way of, do you think that's necessarily like that has to continue being true, that work is an important part of human existence? Because I, in an ideal sort of way, would like to imagine a world where work is optional
Of course.
rather than
Yes.
foundational.
Yes. But that would deal with, I feel like, restructuring capitalism to a sense, and that's
Yeah.
that's a bigger bite to take.
Right.
I think of automation,
Yeah.
and what I worry about is automation can obviously produce the quota that a business or factory needs in a day without human labor. So in a socialist economy, more automation would mean more time off for the actual human laborers at that place.
Yeah.
Because if these machines can do all the work it can do alongside humans, the humans, if a chair factory needs to make 60 chairs in a day, and the automation, the robots can make those chairs or even then some in less amount of time, way more, they meet their quota every day or then some, it would totally shift, it should shift how much work the human labor would need to be doing. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it could go either way, because I've heard people talk about this too, where automation too could mean like then you're fired. You don't get a job.
Right.
All these robots are taking over. So I think, just to talk about the future of work, where it's headed, automation is a big one. Mm-hmm. I don't know how capitalists are gonna, they have a few choices ahead of them, and capitalists are bastards.
Right.
So I don't see them making the choice in the best interests of the working people that work for them.
Yeah. The way I see it is either it's going to go very, very badly if everyone just loses their jobs and there aren't any replacement jobs, or like the government needs to step in and do something like I mentioned a lot, UBI, because then the capitalists can just fire everyone and automate all of the jobs that you used to do. And you can continue earning money in places like of those robots. But then I guess you have to get that money from the government, because the companies aren't going to want to, at least directly, pay for your salary. And that maybe is like the best case scenario, is people get living wages without the work, or with the need for work. Because I'd like to think, some people disagree with me here, but I would like to think that in a world where people don't have to work, they still would. Yeah. Just on things that they care about.
Yep. That's what Marx talks about.
Oh, right. Yeah, like you would see more passion projects and more people just spending their time in ways that are maybe more creative rather than manual labor. Yeah. I've talked to some people who very much disagree and think that people would just be doing nothing with their time, or doing bad things. Which
at the same time, who cares?
Right.
Like it just really is, that idea is really fueled.
Oh, it's so ingrained
with the perspective of like, work is the sole function of human beings on this planet. Like that's what makes you a worthwhile human being. Yeah. Is what you do for work.
Yeah. How much you work, where you work.
Which, that's obviously, like you just said, ingrained. So right.
Yeah, what's so wrong with the idea that you can just not do anything?
Yeah. Exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems beautiful.
Exist and provide for just what you need.
Yeah.
What's cool, I mean, I would love to do a name drop here for anyone who's listening and interested. I've learned a lot about worker power. I've learned a lot about democratizing the workplace. I've learned a lot about socialism and capitalism from Richard Wolff. With two Fs, Richard Wolff with two Fs. An incredible mind. And what's so incredible about him is he talks to you in layman's terms. He talks to you about all of these subjects where, you feel like you may not understand them. It's always been explained in a very complex way. He explains it in such an easy to understand way. He talks to you like your dad would. He talks to you like your grandpa would, explaining these topics.
Is he like, does he have videos, or is he like an author?
Oh, yeah, he's an
All of the above?
author. He does. You can just Google Richard Wolff or on YouTube anywhere. He's got debates. He does debates. He actually has his own Patreon funded video program called Economic Update, talking about the economic lives of you, your children, your children's children, just talks real. And I mean, a lot of what I've been saying has been from him.
Are you familiar with Robert Reich at all?
Yes.
He was the Secretary of Labor.
I see a
under
lot
Bill
of his
Clinton.
tweets.
His tweets are great.
I see a lot of
His
his tweets.
TikTok is great.
Okay, he's got TikTok now.
He's got good, really good books and documentaries.
Okay.
I think my favorite documentary by him is called Inequality for All. That was like a 2008 or 2012, something like that documentary. He's also got another documentary that's kind of like version 2. It's like a lot of the same message, same things, but I don't think it's as good. But that one's called Saving Capitalism. Yeah, he is a really great source of information and also frustration, because all the things he's like
I've heard stuff about him, of like just criticisms
about him. Oh, okay.
Just like his perspective on the economy.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I don't know enough to be like, yeah, that's.
Oh yeah, I meant frustration
justified.
more in the way that like he's like been saying these same things for like 20 years and nothing's ever happened. So it's like kind of sad. But
so is Bernie Sanders. So is every other good intentioned person in power. Yeah, I'd like to know the criticisms that people have of him though. But those are good documentaries. Oh right, was it this year, this spring? I think there was that whatever documentary investigation about billionaires and how much they paid in taxes over the past like 20 years. It's like, you've paid more taxes than Elon Musk did, or like than Jeff Bezos. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts? This is maybe not exactly related to labor, but do you have any thoughts on like taxation and if we should change it or how we should change it? Oh, yeah. I think what's working now is not working.
Right.
And I feel like when things aren't working, a sane individual or sane society would try to find a different pathway to get to a better solution. But this country is run by oligarchs. Yeah. And I think it's Congress. If you look at Congress and how many millionaires there are in Congress, it's a majority of them. They have private interests. So when Bernie Sanders talks about getting big money out of our government, like, I think that's one of the big first steps, which who knows if we'll ever get there. Right. I think it will take. That's
a large first step.
I think it will take dragging a guillotine to the steps. Yeah. And going back, what I wanted to say about work, what we were talking about, like how we think work will be like in the future. Will these capitalists with automation just fire everyone? I really hope to see I want like a general strike. Like, that would be great. Which a general strike just means like multiple companies across industries just stop working. Yeah. Because
I mean, don't we already kind of have that? At least this year, it seems like.
Yeah, thankfully.
There's like a mass walkout, several of them over. It's mostly like food places. I feel like they're like, we're hiring. We'll actually pay $15 an hour. Like, we can't get any jobs, and everybody's quitting their jobs, or just not applying for jobs. Mm-hmm. So it feels like we have that partially, maybe not as much as you'd like to see.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a difference between just like not going to being at a job anymore and showing a strike.
That's true.
Organizing a strike.
Yeah. Actually doing a demonstration rather than just not showing up.
Yeah, and I mean a general strike would be in the thousands of people, hundreds of thousands. Yeah. Which would be great. I think the strikes that do happen, and they do happen, it's just they're never covered. You never hear of them because they don't want you to hear of them. There's a point to that you don't hear of them. They're not covered on the major news sources. There's a reason for that. But they do happen. And again, you can't keep adding income inequality. You can't keep adding all of these bad things without something popping. Yeah. Without an issue bursting. Right. Without...
You can't expect things to...
Something becoming infected.
to just, you can't like bend it forever and never
Yeah.
expect it to break.
I mean, it's already infected.
Yeah.
I always ask myself, I don't know when I'm going to see it or what it's going to look like or when it's going to happen, but I hope it happens within my lifetime. I would love to be a part of it. And that's the other thing too. That's one of the reasons why I want to be changing careers is I hope I can be part of this when it does happen. I would want to be on this side of it when it happens.
And it seems like making the move from early childhood education to unions, in a way, if you're successful, would actually be helping out that early childhood education.
Yep.
Helping unionize would be helping, people get higher income, better support for their children.
And even if it would be great if I could find like a organizing union job in education.
Yeah.
For teachers, like a teachers union.
Is that not a thing that is there many teachers unions?
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
Big ones. I'm trying to remember. There's so many acronyms. It's hard to remember them all. And I just also want to say here, I know I should probably just did this disclaimer earlier, but I'm still learning about all of this.
Oh yeah. Well,
I'm not a complete expert yet, but I'm very interested in becoming one.
No, I think that's just a general theme throughout every episode. Is
right,
that,
right. Ordinary people podcast.
Yeah, people aren't expected to be experts.
Okay.
And if you're a listener right now, you shouldn't expect that we are experts on anything we're talking about. I don't know. Maybe it's like I thought of a different name for the podcast, but it sounded too pretentious. Maybe it was like Halbwissen because it's like the German word for like, I guess like literally means like half knowledge. It more like means like I'm like approximately accurate. Like don't take me like 100% at my word, but like the gist of what I'm saying is accurate.
Yeah.
Kind of so, yeah, and I feel like that's a lot of this podcast is like some of the details might be off, but you get the gist.
Well, I hope you don't mind, but I want to make a point back to like what we were talking about probably 40 minutes ago, where you talked about, addressing young children in their education and addressing like high schoolers or college students. And this podcast of, what you just said there was like, you're not expected to be an expert.
Yeah.
I think with teachers recognizing that you may not be the expert either. And this teacher-student relationship can be us standing side by side and learning together.
Yeah. Like
that
the learning
can
go both
thing.
ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to make that point because I felt necessary too.
No, I always thought that was the best sort of teacher experience, when it felt more collaborative rather than like just lecturing at you or like delivering information from one end to the other.
And that's called something. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's called some gosh.
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, it definitely has a name to it.
Right. But I definitely felt that, and I mean, it's probably easier in some subjects than others, but like my drama class in high school, it was more of like the teacher was involved with us rather than just directing us to do things. Like it's more of a collaborative spirit to the class, which, I mean, I don't know, that's definitely needed for acting, maybe not as needed for math, but it would still be beneficial if math teachers could somehow do that in their classrooms. Maybe more of a challenge to organize your classroom in such a way, but
well, sorry, we can get back to the other topics.
To labor power.
Yes.
Okay, how do you feel about Ronald Reagan?
I don't like him. Because
I think in my view, he might be the worst president.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
Reaganomics.
Right. Okay, so you were talking about unions being a very beneficial way to reverse or fix income inequality. And I agree that would be helpful, but I think most of what Ronald Reagan did is like that's like the starting point of this horrible catastrophe of income stagnation for the middle class and wild income growth for the upper class.
It was.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
And then I was wondering about the taxes right now, because it was something like when Ronald Reagan became president, the tax rate for the rich was something around 75%, and he got it down to like 27%, which was the lowest it had been ever.
Mm-hmm.
But the tax rate for the rich right now is like 21%. And the effective tax rate, of course, is 0%.
Yeah.
But the on-paper tax rate is 21%. So even like now it's lower than it ever was back when Ronald Reagan cut it substantially, cut it by 50%.
Yeah.
To make all of his friends super rich and sell the false idea.
And our economy is so much different than when
right.
Reagan was obviously.
Yeah. I don't think there was such a plethora of
billionaires.
billionaires.
There was no Amazon.
Right.
There was no Elon Musk.
Yeah. There were, well, wondering if there were fewer monopolies, because that's another issue that I think plays into wealth inequality is monopolization.
Mm-hmm.
Unions are much less of a thing than they used to be, and trust busting is much less of a thing than it used to be, where like you got 2 internet companies, but those internet companies are more of like a duopoly, where they kind of, in a lot of cities anyway, work hand in hand to like, okay, so these addresses are yours, these addresses are mine. So if you live in that apartment, you literally have one option. So it's effectively a monopoly. So like, there's not even competition. They're just working together. They're colluding to block out their own separate monopolies.
Well, monopolies go hand in hand with competition, right? Because monopolies will always try to
suppress the competition.
Suppress and grow into one like big conglomerate.
Right. Yeah.
Like the one with the most resources, the most money can like outdo the rest. That's competition, right? And so like the small businesses are always going to be in competition with like the bigger corporate business, like Amazon.
That's actually one of the main problems I have with the model of capitalism in general is that, I mean, I think by definition needs government regulation because, so like I just fundamentally disagree with anybody who's like a free market capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like if you start off just blank slate somehow, imaginary setting, whatever company, even if they're like quality company, they're the best one, they over time become the most successful, they'll have the most money and therefore the most power to do what they want and suppress their competition. If you don't have any regulation at all, that most successful company will buy out or disrupt the other competition and become the monopoly.
Yep.
And then from then on, they'll just stop anyone from even entering that field.
Yep.
So then you just got this snowball effect until it's the only snowball there is.
Yeah. Well, that is the economic functioning of capitalism.
Yeah.
Like capitalism functions to just keep
making things bigger,
keep eating upon itself, spreading out then into like global capitalism, getting into global markets, doing the same thing.
Which is why I feel it's very important if we that we get back into the trust busting game and break up companies, probably like Google, giant company, not exactly a monopoly, but still a company that has like 100 different products, and like Amazon, who's trying to do the same thing, trying to have an Amazon of every single thing you can imagine. Amazon home goods, Amazon internet, Amazon TV, Amazon shipping, Amazon. Literally, if you go onto their website, they've got categories for everything. Most of them you haven't heard of, but
I didn't even know that.
They're trying.
I didn't know they had all of that.
Yeah, they're trying to get into every single thing.
Doesn't surprise me.
Amazon space,
Yeah, right. Right, what's his
Jeff Bezos, yeah.
What's his fucking thing called? It's not SpaceX.
No, that's Tesla's.
Blue Origin?
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous how these companies will just get so inflated and take over everything. And it used to be an idea that was in like 1905 or whatever with like Taft and like Roosevelt, where like you could still consider yourself a capitalist and also want to break up the monopolies. But nowadays, I feel like people who call themselves capitalists are basically like laissez-faire
don't know what it means.
Right, yeah. With the unionization, do you foresee that actually trending upward? Do you think that unions will get back into prominence?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things happening in the waves. For example, now more than ever, young people are much more open to the idea and wanting to join a union if they had the chance. That's actually been measured in terms of just statistics. More people would join a union if they could. It's good to know. And I guess this doesn't really, I don't know how much this connects to union jobs, but now more than ever, young people favor socialism over capitalism.
That's definitely true, yeah.
So I think there's growing awareness, which is always good. I think it just takes people like labor organizers to jump on those opportunities of seeing positive growth, seeing where they can seize the moment.
Yeah. In high school, whatever, like 10 years ago now, I had an economics teacher who had a poster of Ronald Reagan on his wall. And I didn't realize at the time just how absurd that is. How you can be an economics professor who
Did he have like the American flag behind him too?
Probably. I don't remember exactly. I knew it was just Ronald Reagan. But how you could be an economics professor and think trickle-down economics actually succeeded is beyond me. But, well, maybe it succeeded for him. I don't know if he's super rich or not. But anyway, he had us write for one of our assignments like a short essays on like the pros and cons or whatever. Or maybe it was just the pros of an economic system we could choose, capitalism, communism, or socialism. And literally everybody in the class, except for me, chose to write it on capitalism. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's the easiest one. That's the one the teacher was like, nudge, nudge. Like, do capitalism. I was the only one who did socialism, and my teacher was very unhappy that I even did that. Yeah. He didn't like give me an F or anything. He still graded me just fine. But yeah, I feel like that was less of a thing even just 10 years ago, that young people were gung-ho about socialism, but definitely nowadays I've felt the difference. It's just like going on any social media site like Reddit or TikTok or whatnot, you see a bunch of stuff about how work is, at least the modern version of work and capitalism, is bullshit. And there's like a kind of mass bubbling anger about it.
Well, I have a few points in terms of like how do I see unions going in the future. I think that the more people are suppressed, the more people are pushed into living in poverty, are pushed into working 3 jobs and not still being able to afford things. When they're constantly pushed into corners, there's going to be a fight. Yeah. So again, like I was saying, you can't keep overpouring on the income inequality before something pours over or something bubbles, something pops. So I think that's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know what it's going to look like, whatever. And then I also see, like you just said, just kind of a growing distaste for these systems. I'm seeing that now with like just simply on my Facebook feed, on my Instagram feed. I like to post. My friends know that I love to post so much, like shit posting of political stuff and capitalism and whatnot. I also do try to like educate along the way. Yeah. But from that, I'm seeing more of like my actual friends talk about it, think about it, post about it. I'm seeing other people that I don't usually engage with post about things, think about them more. I think that comes with like they're being pushed in a corner. Yeah. Again, so I have faith that when people are pushed in a corner, they will fight back. Right. And going into what you're talking about, your economics teacher, Richard Wolff, who I spoke about earlier, he went to so many Ivy League schools. He went to like 2 or 3 for economics. And even at the Ivy League schools, in his economics courses, he's like, why the fuck aren't we learning about Marx, who was one of the most influential, philosophical, economic educators of their time? He's like, why aren't we learning about Marx? And professors were scared because of the red wave. Yeah. Professors were either forced to threatened to not teach that, or fired.
Did he go to school like during the heights of McCarthyism or something like that?
Maybe. He's an older gentleman. Yeah. So I would say probably around those years. Yeah.
Because I imagine, at least from the way so many people seem to talk about higher education these days, like it's been completely co-opted by the libs or whatever they think, that it seems to me like nowadays you would have college professors more likely to teach about Karl Marx than in the past.
No, yeah.
I wouldn't know either. I did take an economics class last year, but my teacher was crazy, so I don't know. A different one.
It'd be interesting to know if there's any talk about it.
How that's changed over history, over time. Because, I don't know, you would maybe imagine that if there's a uptick in young people more into socialism, that might correspond with an uptick in teaching about socialism in schools. Either which way that goes, I don't know. Either if like they're being taught about it so that they like it, or they like it so the teachers decide to start teaching about it. I don't know. But
I think there's a lot of individuals out there who are teachers who understand this and will teach, but I don't think it's big across the board.
Right.
It all depends like what the school district. I mean, just the individual. Really, it comes down to the individual teacher.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, not only that, but you could be an individual teacher who wants to teach these things, but you have a bad administration that would. And I didn't mean to say red wave. I meant to say red scare.
Red scare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess less likely in high schools because they're kind of ruled by conservative school boards and
curriculum.
The parents of the suburbs who don't want anything having to do with the C word in their schools.
It blew my mind where my friend who's like super into politics, labor organizing, they went to school for this, they have years of experience. It's insane. I learned so much from this person. They told me like Republicans will groom their candidates by putting them through like school board positions.
Oh.
So being part of the school board is how they like groom for public office.
Huh. That's interesting.
So I'm like, it'd be cool to be part of the school board. That's something that I could do, as well.
I wanted to ask also, you mentioned 30% higher pay, and also you mentioned healthcare, but what are the other benefits of being in a union? Or are those like the big ones?
Yeah, healthcare, a pension.
Oh, right.
I mean, and I think a pension, I'm wondering if a 401k is the same as a pension, or if you're in a union job, you get a pension rather than you get a 401k. Or if I feel like my dad has a 401k and he has a pension.
Yeah, I think they're different.
They are different.
I haven't had either of them. So
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so a pension.
Yeah, because I think a 401k is the thing where you put money into it for your whole career, and your employer, I think, typically matches some percentage of what you put into it. And then the pension that's money that you get after retirement, and it is based off of how many years you worked there. 401k is like constantly accumulating over time, where the pension is more of a retirement bonus.
Yep. Which you
for
continue,
loyalty.
Which you continue to get, right?
Yeah, you get it for the rest of your life.
Continue to get the rest of your life.
It's like retirement
401k
money.
is just what you get at the end of ending your employment with them.
Well, 401k is like a bank account that you have always been putting money into yourself.
Yes.
From your paycheck, like a non-taxed money, I think.
Mm-hmm. And once you're done working, you can take that money for retirement. Yeah. Your retirement expenses.
And then pension, that didn't come from you. That's just like money straight from your employer.
Yeah.
For years of good service.
Yep. And you can, and at some places you have to work so many years
before
to be able to get this pension. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the difference too, because like most places you just start with a 401k. If it's like a office job or whatever, you just have a 401k from day one.
Yeah.
Or a Roth IRA or whatever.
I'm sure there are so many others that I'm not mentioning with like benefits from the union, but I feel like day-to-day ones, just knowing, you can support your family, knowing you can go on vacations and afford them.
Is there anything like being resistant or like having more difficulty firing you or laying you off if you're in a union or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's what my dad does. He's a union steward.
Oh, okay.
So he handles grievances. Something that happened at work. What happened at work? Well, it was with management disrespecting the contract. Union stewards focus on the contract with both entities. This person was within the contract. Management is not. Management will always try to keep pushing the envelope. And that's what's great about a union is like you're always going to have a steward there who is the mediator.
Right. You've got other people like
backing it's you kind up. Of like having a lawyer at your job, essentially.
Oh, okay.
My dad has helped many workers keep their jobs.
Does being a union steward involve like law or like having a law degree or anything like that? Okay. No. So it's like not actually lawyer, but like lawyer-esque duties?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just pretty much like focusing on the contract that both management and the employee signed. Yeah. And then making sure both entities hold up their end of what they signed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I said I wanted to keep it 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll probably wrap it up now. But before we end, one thing that I like to end off on maybe half the time or so is getting a recommendation of usually a book, but it could also be something like a TV show or whatnot from you. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned, what was his first name? It was Wolf?
Richard Wolf.
You mentioned Richard Wolf. Does he have any specific books that you recommend?
He has a few. I know he just came out with another one. It's about capitalism. I'm forgetting the actual title. But I bought one of his books that's titled Understanding Socialism. So he talks about socialism, where it came from, its history.
Yeah.
So I have that one. I would recommend his economic update, which you can find on YouTube.
Yeah, because I feel like one of the problems about older people, such as people my parents' age or older, who immediately like go on alert when they hear socialism.
Yeah.
I think part of that is there's different meanings socialism has taken on over time. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by the term socialism is different from what my dad
Mm-hmm.
means when he says socialism.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which he'll talk about that in the book, and
Yeah.
how it's just been badly used,
Right.
thrown in the mud, weaponized.
yeah.
Yeah, Richard Wolff, economic update. Literally anything by him is great. Whether you find like an update or not update, a debate or an interview on YouTube of his, any book that he's written. I would like to get his new one, which is about like the failures of capitalism and why capitalism fails every 4 to 7 years, like on average every
Like
4 to
with the
7
recession.
years.
or
Yeah,
something?
it crashes, it fails, and why we keep sticking to something that keeps failing people,
Yeah.
millions of people. Anyways, side note, but the labor book I just read was great. Beaten up, worked down, the past, present, and future of American labor.
Do you ever read any fiction?
No.
Oh, really?
I mean, I wouldn't mind, but all the books right now in my queue are all nonfiction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like to read a lot of nonfiction too, but I think usually I try to read a bit of both. Like
Someone told me like you need to read fiction because I get a little too worked up in my nonfiction.
Yeah. Sometimes reading too much fiction can be too depressing because you're learning about all these.
That's exactly what they mean.
Yeah.
Like cool it down with some fiction.
Just every once in a while read a book that
Yeah.
you can just simply enjoy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it helps too because when I read nonfiction, I want to like completely absorb it, so it takes me longer.
Mm-hmm.
Fiction I can just kind of get through really quick.
Yep.
But cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for listening.